Hi, everyone. Before we get started with this episode of Jung in the World, I just want to jump in and give you a quick reminder that we have a bunch of new webinars, in-person programs, and a tour to India open for registration. So if you are interested in training and education around Jungian ideas and frameworks, then please visit our website, jungchicago.org. Thanks.
Welcome to the B-side of Jung in the World, where we go off-road to explore the strange and even promising ways that the human psyche is adapting in a fast-changing world. I'm your host, Patricia Martin. Today I have with us Hilde Helphenstein, a visual artist, digital storyteller, and the creative force behind the viral satirical Instagram account at Jerry Gogosian. And when I say viral, I mean, I watched that persona character at Jerry Gogosian explode into a phenomenon over 7 years. And so I was determined to have its inspirator, Ms. Helphenstein, join us to talk about this business of living in a persona for 7 years and being very public about that. And so before we dive into the questions I have for her, I'll just give you a little bit of background on her. So she is the editor-in-chief of the Jerry Report, and which is a Substack, yes?
It's a actually thing that we're actually in motion right now. I do have a Substack that somebody can still find under the name Jerry Gogosian, but things are in flux, as we'll get into shortly, because Jerry Gogosian has come to a conclusion at the end of 7+ years. So I actually am on a bit of a hiatus. So you could say, we think this is an exceptionally talented person. We may have heard through the internet once that she is, but as of right now, she doesn't do anything.
Oh, very interesting. So
That's not true, of course, but
no, but you've cocooned her.
I
Right?
have been cocooned, yes.
Yes.
Very, very intentionally so.
Well,
So if somebody would be interested in, I would say the only sort of thing that's still live is that I have a podcast called Art Smack that's gone through several iterations. It started as AM Art World Radio. It was sort of started in the middle of the pandemic and intentionally a little hard to listen to, great guests. And then that became Art Smack. And Art Smack has now been running for 6+ years. And because I'm cocooning, I have also pulled it back to where listening to Art Smack would sort of just be like listening to me on a phone call. So it's just me. I take my listeners with me exercising. I take them on airplanes. I take them wandering through junk shops in Georgia. But that's sort of the only thing that's currently live at the moment.
very interesting. So you have also had a background as a visual artist and as a curator. So you have, you've built a vibrant online community and you organize large-scale dance events and you've collaborated with brands like Sotheby's and On Running. And you've received features in the Wall Street Journal, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, just to name a few. So you're also wrapping up your executive MBA at NYU. So you're very busy, as well as sort of transforming, I guess I would say, this 7-year project into something else. And we want to talk about that. And we want to talk about what you learned from the Jerry Gogosian project. But I want to start at the beginning. So, Hilde, tell us, how did you conceive of this idea? What was your inspiration for assuming the Jerry Gogosian persona? And maybe you should throw in there as well this name, Gogosian, because it's so apropos. Yeah, it's so apropos to the experiment and to what you talked about as Jerry Gogosian. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay, well, let's start at the very beginning. The very place to start. So I worked in the art world for oh gosh, okay, let me do the math so that I'm not lying. I professionally worked for other people, let's just say, for 7 years. And then my last paying job that I ever had was working in a very lowly position. I don't want you to think I was doing anything important, as a front desk girl at Gagosian Gallery in San Francisco. And for those who are listening who don't know, Larry Gagosian is essentially the king of the art world. He's the most famous art dealer to have probably lived in the last century, maybe two, and is a luminary in the field. And so he's Larry Gagosian. And then, of course, there's Jerry Saltz, who's the Pulitzer Prize winning art critic and very large social media persona unto himself, except I think his is very raw and authentic. And so I had worked for Larry for a while. Of course, I knew who Jerry was. I'd met him several times while I was working in the New York art world. And then I had my own art gallery in Los Angeles for a couple of years. And then I had an experience that changed my life, which is that I was in upstate New York in Hudson, officiating a wedding for two very dear friends, standing barefoot in the grass. And unbeknownst to me, I was bit by a tick, and I contracted a very rare disease, very hard to diagnose because it's so rare. I think 300 people a year get diagnosed with it, called typhus rickettsia.
Oh,
And it is a tick-borne related illness, but it's a very acute illness. So it incubates in your system for 10 days. You have no idea. I left the wedding, had a great time, came back and got an exhibition ready to go. And the night of the opening, I love openings. I just remember like, I'm not like feeling like so good. Did I eat something weird yesterday? Or like, it started feeling bad. And what started as just kind of not feeling okay meant that I ended up at Kaiser Permanente in the ICU um, for 16 days after going to the emergency room for 5 different times because, like I said, it's very hard to diagnose. They had to get an infectious disease doctor involved.
wow.
And in the process of this illness, not only did I code 4 times, and I did not want to be brought back, by the way. Like some people in those moments, like really find the like will to live and they're like, I'm going to survive this. And I was like, please just leave me out of this. Like, please let me go. This is incredibly painful. I don't want one more moment of being alive for this. But I also went temporarily blind,
Oh my
deaf.
gosh.
I lost use of my hands and my feet. So that illness landed me in bed for 9+ months, which meant I had to close my art gallery. I had to, at the ripe age of 33, everyone's favorite thing to do at the age of 33, move home to my parents and start living in my childhood bedroom while I began to heal. And I created this Instagram account genuinely thinking like my career in the arts is over. So might as well like make jokes about it, because the art market and the art world can be a very surreal and absurd place to operate in. And I sort of felt like I had nothing to lose. So I created this character, Jerry Gogosian, initially anonymous. I found the logo by Googling Andy Warhol's wig. And I found this highly pixelated photograph of a styrofoam head that somebody had pinned one of Andy Warhol's wigs to for Christie's in 1998. So it was like so far back on their website. They're like, I used to laugh when people would be like, "Can we have a high res image of your logo?" And I'd be like, "There's no such thing as a high res image of my logo." But that sort of became the stand-in because it was just a mannequin sort of nondescript face. It became the stand-in for this character, Jerry Gogosian.
And so you were just sort of killing time or taking a lark and experimenting with this, right?
Yeah, I had nothing to do. I was in bed I could get in and out of bed. I was healing, but it started incrementally, like 20 minutes, and then I'd be like, "Oh, I got to go back to bed." Like a little bit, a little bit. So I had nothing to do but like watch live auctions on YouTube, read the different art publications as they come out. And then Jerry caught on quickly with sort of the in the know crowd, which surprised me, actually. Um, I think probably because they're maybe the most paranoid subset within the art world. And so all of a sudden my inbox became like a confessional slash tattletale box where people were, sending me internal documents, sending me gossip, sending me this, sending me that, kind of hoping that I would, divulge. But I'd always, first of all, America, we live in such a litigious country. I was always very careful about those things, but I also knew, like, it's more fun to be the holder of the secrets than it is to just give it up every time I'm given a secret. And I tell people now, or I did especially when the account was open, they'd be like, "Please don't tell anybody this." And I'm like, first of all, no offense, there's nothing I can not hear at this point, but like this inbox, if should it be raided by the FBI, if you're listening, would probably put a few people in jail.
Oh.
But it's all, who knows, hearsay or people accusing each other of things. The art world's a very, very small place. And so there's a lot of theft, a lot of pettiness, a lot of tax evasion, a lot of white collar crime that happens. And
but that is all sort of pasted over with this very fancy look, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a very showy business.
Oh,
but
yeah.
there's this huge backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
that's not
the
used.
whole illusion. That's the whole illusion, right? Like, oh, I'm just walking into a white room that's empty and there's nothing but 4 things on the wall.
Yeah.
In like the most expensive real estate in the most expensive cities in the world. They just must be great at simplicity and minimalism, right?
Yeah.
No.
So
I'm shaking my head, no.
So here you're adopting this persona. You're building an audience like wildfire. And I think that's when I found you maybe a year after you started. And I could see that there was this voracious appetite for people to really understand what goes on behind the scenes. So a persona was really useful for that. But how did the power structure of the art world, which is pretty hierarchical,
Mm-hmm.
how did the power structure react to your experiment as Jerry Gogosian?
Well, when I was anonymous and they thought I was a man, they called me a genius.
Huh.
I can't even begin to tell you like the beautiful articles that were written about this anonymous male genius. And there was a lot of speculation that I was a man. Actually, but the highest compliment I sort of thought was several people thought I was a really sassy gay man, and I was like, that's kind of my favorite humor, so I'll take that as a compliment. Um, when it was revealed that I was a woman, and a gorgeous one at that, for those of you who aren't watching at home, um, all of a
That's
sudden
true, by the way.
the thank you the rhetoric changed to, oh, that's just a bitter woman who'd never been invited to the party. So there was, and that is published by Frieze magazine, which Frieze is also an art fair. It's an art publication, one that you would think would champion and stick up for women, um, wrote that. And I mean, and to say I have not been received well by art press is an understatement. I mean, the Wall Street Journal picked up on me and was probably it was probably the first time somebody had written something nice about me. Legacy media, which, we always want to be loved by our own, but like legacy media, they picked up on me. Harper's, Vogue, like all these different publications that I didn't necessarily, I kind of wanted the approval of Art News or ArtNet or or of a Freeze or whatever. And I mean, the art newspapers has been kind over the years, but it, I was not accepted by them. I was only accepted by people outside of the art world, I guess, because seemingly I am an outsider. Some people would say now I'm not an outsider, but I am an outsider. I was not born into generational wealth. That's key number one. Because even if you're exceptionally wealthy, the art world, in the traditional sense, doesn't care. They do not care. They're still not going to sell you what you want when you want it just because you have money. They want to know what kind of collection you have and where it's going to. And, there is so much hierarchy and there's so much classism and elitism. And I was never going to win. I was never, ever, ever going to win unless I married like a Jeff Bezos, maybe, or something. You know what I mean? I was just never going to win. So in that sense, I'll always, even though now I am a woman who is invited to all the parties. Now I am, I do go to all the major art fairs. I do go to all the major exhibitions. Um, and I do collect art. I'm still never going to be truly an insider. Like I'm about to go to the Hamptons tomorrow, and it's just amusing to me. Like, staying in somebody's $300 million home in like room number 40 on their compound. And you're like, and then you find out they've got so many guests, but their house is so big that you never even see the guests that are in the house. I mean, this
Wow.
is the kind of wealth that we're talking about in the art world. This is not a poor man's game. And there's been a lot of people that have tried to game it. I have friends that are poker players and gamblers, and I've had celebrity friends try to break in. And it's like, it is intentionally blocked and gate kept 100% intentionally, because the difference between Hollywood or the music world or the fashion industry and the art world is the art world does not want to be discovered. They don't want more people coming to their club.
Oh,
Their
no.
club is perfectly fine the way it is.
It is exclusionary for a reason. That's the purest form of elitism.
Mm-hmm.
And so by adopting this persona of Jerry Gogosian, you were able to kind of slip under the fence because no one had ever really done it before that I'm aware of, or at least done it so brilliantly and with so much wit online. And so you're building this audience, and then I'm starting to notice as you're going to these art fairs and you're in the back of a taxi, recanting like what it was like at the show, or, as you're traveling the world and talking about art as Jerry Gogosian, people start responding to you as Jerry Gogosian. So like, that's another level. One level of investment in a persona, which Carl Jung believed was sort of the GUI interface between you and the world, right? Mm-hmm. It's how the world interacts with you. And so it's very useful, and it has its origins in ego, which is not to say that there's anything bad about it, but it's kind of comes out of the executive function where you're trying to manage your way through the world. And your persona is helping you out with that. And it's helping you adapt to social situations. So what's fascinating to me is this art world that you're describing is relatively resistant to adaptation.
100%.
You have to, right? You have to be born into it, trained at an Ivy. There are all these rules.
I studied fine art for 7 years. I speak 4 languages. I don't pretend to come from the gutter. Like right. But like I was joking the other day on my podcast. I was like, well, I have to run over to my parents' compound, which I'm joking, it's my childhood home, but it's not a compound the size of, 3 football fields. It's on like an acre of land,
right.
like
right.
it's just a totally different universe. But the one thing that I have said, and I can explain this further as we talk about it, is I often say to people, on one hand, Jerry Gogosian saved my life. And then there came a day where Jerry tried to kill me.
Wow.
And there was this, as Jerry was growing, it suddenly gave me like a kind of a will to live again. Because I had, people from Hollywood begging for meetings, begging to sign an NDA. We have to know who you are. We want to make a TV show. We want to do this. We want to do that. People, and I was like, oh, I have a reason to like stay alive and get better and want to get better. So I can accept that invitation to Brazil. So I can accept that invitation to the offices of United Talent Agency in Hollywood. And and so suddenly I was invigorated to be alive again. And it helped me get better in that sense.
So I can see the utility of it. And on many levels, that's profound. It gave you it restored your will to live. Mm-hmm. So the trick is about that, and I don't say this in any pejorative way. It's really coming from a source of curiosity for me. Carl Jung's theory of the is also that like it does useful things for us. Just like there you go. There's a description of a useful thing persona does. The trick is when we begin to overinvest in it, it has a tendency to do things to us and start to give us psychological symptoms. In other words, we start to get feedback, not only from the psyche, but the body saying, you may have gone too far. Mm-hmm. Is that this moment you're talking about?
what
I mean,
what
when you
what
said,
no, wait, listen.
oh, sorry.
What's the like what's your audience's tolerance level for the truth?
Oh, very high.
Okay.
First of all, our audience is extremely loyal,
Okay,
and
good.
our listen times average at 38 minutes. So
That's great.
they are
Yeah.
right here with you right now.
Okay. So yes. So first of all, I mean, like the first sign of it was now people will say Jerry, and I will turn my head in the same way that if somebody were to say my first name, I'll turn and I'll look. So it was little things like that there was an indication. And then what ended up happening, because I became a figure for the outsider, the ones who felt left out or unincluded, or the ones who would never make it into the inner sanctum, that suddenly I began, and this was not of my own will or attempt, but I began to take on like a sainthood toward them.
Oh.
So, it was not uncommon for people to burst into tears when they would meet me, or touch me without asking, or, you know, take pictures of me without asking, or just ask to take pictures. There was a lot of nice stuff like that. Or people who I didn't know at all would instantly just start telling me their sad story about whatever was going on in their life. And it started to give me a responsibility. With great privilege comes great responsibility. And I know that I received this great privilege. I love my audience in the same way that I'm sure you love your listeners, because you can almost sort of parasocially feel them. Like I could very parasocially feel my audience and understand. And I've given enough panels. I've been in public enough in certain places where, where anybody else would know who I am, to understand how important I had become symbolically to those people. But what came with that is also, it began to be its own form of censorship, because now I had to consider anyone and everyone who I could possibly hurt with a joke. And that is not, when you're working in humor and satire, that's not a great place to be in. Not to mention, we went through like the peak cancellation period during COVID, after COVID, a little before COVID, where, I mean, you could fart in the wrong direction and get canceled. So suddenly I was forced to take on almost a more earnest role, which then sort of pushed this saintlyhoodness even further. And I started getting very frustrated with it. So,
Well, wait, what was frustrating about it? I mean,
because I didn't
certainly.
get to be funny anymore.
Oh, yeah. It was quashing your voice
Because
because you had to be a
everything
saint. That was the archetype.
I had to be a saint.
Yeah.
I had to be an angel. I had to give everyone hope. I had to be their biggest cheerleader. I had to tell them, you are okay. You are good enough. You are going to beat them. And if you don't beat them, who cares? Like, you don't want to be a part of that anyway. I really had to sort of like, I mean, I would be a great like hype woman for like people going out into a boxing ring. I got very good at exciting people, and like, you're talented. You're waiting on like 5,000 people in a world full of, I don't know how many billions we're at now, but 9 to 11 billion people. You're waiting for 5,000 people to tell you you're good enough. I'm not going to curse, but like F them, like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and because I sort of really took on that position, and then I really started to study the market. And I did go back to business school because I felt a moral obligation to understand the market dynamics that were at play for how this works, because I wanted to come up with alternatives for artists who were starving artists. The cliche, how do we crack that shell? How do we break out of that starving artist mentality? There's so much money out in the world. There's not a lack of money. It's just ocean. What is it? The bloody ocean theory? Like you're swimming in shark infested water. Like there's such a huge ocean out there. Go somewhere else and find a blue ocean. And I realized that not all artists had financial literacy or market literacy. So I sort of, again, took it upon myself, like, and for myself too, selfishly, like I love to learn. I'm not I'm a lifelong learner. So I went back, I got accepted to NYU Stern's executive MBA program, and I started there, and I started to learn very, very, very quickly why things just weren't going to work out for so many people. But because I understand why the exclusionary traditional art world didn't want to let so many people in, we had a problem. There's a gap in the market, as they like to say. So then I started trying to solve for that. And so I started trying to reimagine Jerry Gogosian. I started trying to reimagine a world where it would be good for everyone, everywhere, all the time. And that became too much pressure. And again, and I started getting comments, of course, where people were like, what is this, like Oprah? Like, this account used to be funny. Like, this, you're so earnest now. It's sickening. And I was just like, if you understood, to this imaginary internet person, how many people I'm considering in every single post, and it's not just, it wasn't about posting at this point. There's a huge philanthropic arm that belongs to Jerry Gogosian. There's a huge, obviously there's the business arm, there's the public speaking, there's the writing that includes the market analysis. There are so many things at play. Like, please don't criticize me. I'm sorry, sir, that I wasn't funny enough for you today. Anyways, it became so much that in October of last year, I attempted suicide.
Wow.
And I went away to like an emotional rehab. And the emotional rehab was a little bush league for me. I'm already into Iyengar, Ashtanga yoga. I have a huge fitness practice. I believe in God. I don't know where anyone else listening to this. I've always believed in God. I pray every day. I had a lot of the practice. And I'm very, very, again, I don't want to offend anyone here, but I didn't really want trauma therapy, because you can't just do trauma therapy in 35 days and then be like, okay, so thank you so much. Like, your insurance is run out. So have a nice life, and thank you for coming.
You're all good.
Yeah, you're fine. But what ended up happening was I came home, and within 10 days, my marriage dissolved. I was thrown out of my house, not like thrown out, but I mean, my husband at the time asked me to leave. And so I thought, okay, I know what I'll do. I have a book deal from United Talent Agency. I'll go and I'll write about this, and I will extricate these demons, or this demon, Jerry. I'll put it all on paper, and I will understand this, and I can sort of move past this chapter and reinvent myself. And after writing from basically the beginning of January till about January 21st, it went from being hard times because, I was going through a separation I didn't particularly want. I didn't want to sell my house. I didn't want to change my life as drastically as it was changing. I had shut Jerry Gogosian down as an Instagram account. I had shut down the business component. I refunded everyone on their subscriptions. I mean, it was done in my mind. And all I wanted to do was get it out on paper and be finished with it. And then reinvent myself again, because I'm more than a one-trick pony. I felt like an actress who was playing the same character in a soap opera for 7 years, and I felt like I couldn't get out of it. And every time people would be like, well, that's the performance right there. And I'd be like, no, I'm just talking. And they'd be like, there's the performance. And I'm like, no, this isn't a performance anymore, guys. Like, this is real. And it just got to a point where once again, and this time it was incredibly planned out. I do not know how I was unsuccessful. I'm very apparently bad at attempting and fully going through with a suicide. I thought I had created the right concoction of drugs to do all the right things to, make sure that I never woke up again. And somehow I woke up like 37 hours later and just very thirsty.
Interesting.
And I was like, why am I here? Like, I can't get out of this.
I can only imagine, and I don't mean to be flippant because what you're sharing is really brave and very deep. But I can only imagine what it was like to open your eyes and say, oh, I'm still here?
No, I was not. Again, it's sort of like when I was sick with typhus, rickettsia. I was like, and they kept reviving me. I was like, I don't really particularly want stop, guys. Like, I'm in so much pain. And I felt that way with like Jerry and with this whole thing where I felt like, like, I didn't really want to come back, and I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't wake up with a better attitude. I wasn't like, oh my God, I hit a bottom. Now I'm ready. There's nowhere to go but up from here. Like, I did not have a good attitude about it. I don't know. I was in the, and I'm sure some psychiatrist somewhere, and I've had lots of them, could try to impose some kind of diagnosis onto me. But thus far, no one's ever been able to place a permanent diagnosis on me. It's just that I was in the darkest depths of despair and anguish, and I felt trapped, and I felt alone, and I felt like I had on one hand 150 plus thousand people who seemingly loved me and cared about me, but on the other hand, I was holed up in an apartment in London, and I wouldn't give anybody the address to where I was, and I was hiding, and I was agoraphobic, and I was a mess. And so, like, the cliche, I think, journal about it, write about it, like write about things. In my particular instance, 100% backfired on me.
How so?
Because every day that I woke up and the more I wrote, every day got darker and darker.
This is the end of part 1 of my interview with Hilde Helphenstein, who lived almost entirely as her online persona for 7 years. I want you to join us for part 2, where her story takes a turn and gets even more interesting.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like more information about training programs, live and self-study courses, archives, this podcast, our blog, or to find Jungian analysts near you, visit our website, jungchicago.org. Thank you to our 2024 donors who gave at the contributor level or above. Barbara Anand, PhD in honor of Fred Maples, S.J., Uni Alcott, Judith and Eric Cooper, David Dalrymple, Mary Doherty, Full Bloom Lotus Center for Self-Awareness, Boris Matthews, Bruce G. and Mary A. Robert Family Foundation, Diane Sherwood, Lawrence C. Tingley, Alexander Wayne and Lynn Kopp, and the Blackbaud Giving Fund. You can support this podcast by making a donation at our website, jungchicago.org.